Here are the explanations and the proofs that the Quran is fully detailed as to how to establish, observe, and perform the Salat, the contact prayer, with its physical motions and its utterances using purely the Quran alone. This is a pretty long video which is also separated into 9 other videos called pages, 1 to 9. They are all linked to the following 9 pages of this Salat document that we will be going through in this full video. Page 1 will be a quick view over 95 of the 99 occurrences of the word Salat in 2 derived forms through the Quran alone. Page 2 will be concerning the 2 remaining derived forms of the word Salat, thus touching all 99 occurrences of the word Salat in the Quran, plus the introduction of the 2 physical sets of the Salat. Page 3 is the physical motions and the utterances of the Salat contact prayer through the Quran alone. This is the longest page and part of this video. Page 4 is about doing 2 specific positions on the Day of Judgment which are not performed correctly, using the Quran alone and a few verses from the Old Testament. Page 5 is the Allahu Akbar, God is greater, proof and reasoning through the Quran. And page 6 is concerning the proof of the mathematical calculations of the minimum plural terminology of the Quran. Page 7 is about the Qibla, direction of the contact prayer, Salat, the proof and reasoning through the Quran. And page 8 is about the 18 exemplary prophets to follow, and the seal of the prophets, Muhammad, the 19th within as example. And finally, page 9, why is more than the majority following falsehood, explains the truth about the reality in which we live. If you are hungry for knowledge concerning the Quran, especially the Salat, which is our connection with our Creator, then you have arrived by God's will at the best place. This is the first time after more than 1300 years that the Salat is fully explained with the physical motions and utterances, plus an additional video of me showing you how this was really done, inshaAllah. Therefore, please be patient and go through the whole video or videos before you come to any conclusion. Patience is the key. However, before you establish and observe the Salat, contact prayer, you need to know the specific times to perform and establish the Salat, as God tells us in Surah 4, 103, as one has completed his Salat. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, bismillahir rahmanir rahim. That when you have finished the Salat, then remember God while standing, sitting, and reclining. Then when you feel reassured, re-establish the Salat. Indeed, the Salat is prescribed for the believers at specific times. And therefore, in order to have the best understanding of the specific times or instances of the Salat, contact prayer, we must see all the time frames that God mentions in the Quran. Here are all the time frames mentioned in the Quran. Before I explain to you how to understand and read this, you should note that there are Salat instances and Tasbih instances. Tasbih means glorification. The proof that these two are different entities is said here in Surah 24, verse 41. Do you not realize that everyone in the heavens and the earth glorifies God, even the birds with wings outspread? Each surely knows its Salat and its Tasbih. God is fully aware of everything they do. The Tasbih timeframes will be explained when you get to the video of Prophet Jesus, son of Mary, as well as Prophet Zechariah and Prophet John. But for the time being, let's start the Salat contact prayer time frame before we see the physical motions and utterances of the Salat with clear Quranic proofs only. So to understand how to read this, you will know that there are 19 time frames in the Quran. It first starts here from the late night on the right. As you can see, the arrows are pointing towards the left, which is the motion in which time is flowing. So basically the sun rises from the east and sets at the west. Then there is this unique time frame called Sahar, which is the end of the late night time frame to the beginning of the crack of dawn. The first main transformation has occurred. The day is now starting. Then it's dawn, followed by the daybreak, followed by the early morning, then followed by morning, then followed by the forenoon, followed by noon, followed by the second main transformation as the sun declines from its highest point at noon. to this motion and time frame, which is called the rawahu, or the spiritual noon, followed by the afternoon, followed by the evening, followed by the third and final transformation, the late evening, as the sun has already set here in red, but there is still light. Then once all the light is gone from the twilight, now the night has started. The night has three portions: one third, a half, two third, and as the two third gets to the three third, which is the end, as well as the beginning and the first time frame that I explained, the late night, here on the right. All these surahs with their verses below them are when these time frames are mentioned in the Quran, in case you're wondering. Therefore, this whole cycle containing all the time frames is called a yawm in Arabic, which some would say that has the same meaning as the day or a whole day would be a better way to translate it. But in Arabic, a day is nahar, as you can see here, the fourth one that I named. This is where most translators make the wrong choices or do not see the importance of this translation to have any impact on the reader. But it does have a great impact on many subjects, which will be discussed in the near future, inshaAllah, like Salatul Jumu'ah, the Friday contact prayer, or the creation of the heavens and the earth, and so on. But for now, the Salat contact prayer time frame must be clarified, as the Quran is fully detailed, as you can see here. The first place God mentions the Salat contact prayer time frames is in Surah 11, Hud, verse 114, as follows. And establish the contact prayer, Salat, at both ends of the day and at the approaches from the night. Indeed, the good deeds wipe out the evil deeds. That is a reminder for those who remember. Most people think that there are three time frames here, but there are in fact only two. The both ends of the day are the only two time frames because of the logical question that should automatically arise. When do you start the contact prayer from the first end and the second end of the day? For example, the first end of the day is here at the blue line, just before the sun rises, the crack of dawn time frame. So the question is, do you start the Salat contact prayer before sunrise, meaning near dawn, or after sunrise, meaning the daybreak? Now the same principle applies to the second end here, at the red line, where the sun sets. So again, do you start the Salat contact prayer before the sun sets, which is at the evening time frame, or after the sun sets, which is the late evening time frame? As you may have noticed, the answer is in the same verse where most people thought it to be the third time frame, which is not, as it says, and at the approaches from the night. So keep this in mind. Therefore, let's start from the first end here. The question was, do you start the Salat contact prayer before sunrise, meaning near dawn, or after sunrise, meaning the daybreak? As the verse says, at the approaches from the night. As you can see, the night approaches only from right here, and this can only be the dawn time frame, which is also confirmed by name in Surah 24 verse 58 at the 17th Arabic word, which is also a Salat contact prayer name, the dawn contact prayer, or Salatul Fajr. Now let's go to the second end here. The question was, do you start the Salat contact prayer before the sun sets, which is the evening time frame, or after the sun sets, the late evening time frame? Again, as the verse says, at the approaches from the night. As you can see, the night approaches only from the left here, and this can only be the late evening time frame, which is also confirmed by its name in Surah 24, light, verse 58. Again, from the 26th Arabic word though, as a Salat contact prayer name, the late evening contact prayer, or Salatul Isha. Henceforth, Surah 11, verse 114, describes two specific time frames in the same verse, and both of their names are also mentioned in a separate surah, which is 24 in verse 58 as well. But when do these two time frames end are not mentioned in Surah 11, verse 114. Only their beginnings were clarified. That is why it is interesting to note that in Surah Baqarah 2, verse 238, God informs us to strictly guard upon the contact prayers, which is in plural, meaning that there are either specifically three or maybe more. Then in the same verse, it emphasizes to establish the middle contact prayer, which is being mentioned by name as Salatul Wusta. The logical question arises, is there any mention of the time frame for this middle contact prayer? Because the previous two are mentioned by name and their time frames are mentioned as well, but their ending were not mentioned. So the simple answer to the time frame for the middle contact prayer is yes. It is mentioned in Surah 17 verse 78, and the verse says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Establish the contact prayer at the declining of the sun till the night's twilight, and at the recitation of dawn. Indeed, the recitation of dawn is ever witnessed. This verse is clearly describing the beginning and the end of the middle contact prayer time frame, because the sun declines right after noon, thus the term afternoon, which is between the first time frame that we saw, the dawn contact prayer, Salat al-Fajr, and the last time frame we saw as the late evening contact prayer, Salatul Isha. Know that the end of the middle contact prayer ends at the night's twilight, meaning almost nighttime, so the late evening contact prayer is directly noticeable. At the same time, you know when to start precisely the late evening contact prayer, as the middle contact prayer ends. Additionally, it mentions and at the recitation of dawn, which is clearly referring to the dawn contact prayer as well. In other words, the dawn contact prayer ends when the sun declines from the highest point, which is at noon. But instead of using the word contact prayer with dawn, which was mentioned in the beginning of the verse, God chose the word recitation instead. The word recitation is translated from the Arabic word Quran. Hence, this verse is informing us to specifically read the Quran during the middle contact prayer, late evening contact prayer, and at the dawn contact prayer. However, it emphasizes to recite the Quran at the dawn contact prayer, Salatul Fajr, because it is ever witnessed. And it is the first contact prayer from the beginning of the day. Therefore, Surah 17, verse 78 perfectly describes the middle contact prayer time frame, specifically from its beginning till its ending, as well as the ending of the dawn contact prayer till noon, and the precise beginning of the late evening contact prayer as it ends at dawn, and to recite the Quran during these three contact prayers. This completes one yom, or a full cycle of all the contact prayers in the Quran that one can do in a full day. It is important to know and to realize the fact that every word that God uses in the Quran has a specific number of repetitions with a specific purpose. A good and simple example is the word yom. It is repeated in its singular form precisely 365 times, and in its plural form 30 times. Here is the proof. Pay attention on the bottom right here. As you can see, 365 times precisely. You have their surah and verse number also. So as you can see, Surah 11 verse 114 describes two specific time frames in the same verse, and both of their names are also mentioned in Surah 24 verse 58. Surah 2 verse 238 brings up the name of the middle contact prayer, which the middle contact prayer time frame is perfectly described in 1778, specifically from its beginning till its ending, as well as the ending of the dawn contact prayer till noon, and the precise beginning of the late evening contact prayer as it ends at dawn, and the recitation of the Quran during these three contact prayers. Now here at the bottom, Surah 20 verse 130 describes the tasbih time frames. Most Muslims believe that this verse is referring to the Salat contact prayer time frames. If that was the case, it would be a direct contradiction to the Quran. We must read the verse in order to understand why it will contradict the Salat contact prayer time frames. Surah 20 verse 130 and Surah 50 verse 39 says, Therefore, be patient in the face of their utterances, and glorify by praising your Lord before sunrise and before sunset. Verse 50, verse 39 ends here. And during periods of the night, and glorify at the ends or portions of the day, that you may be happy. First of all, the verse does not even mention the word salat, contact prayer. It mentions to glorify, which is another derived form of the word tasbih. but in the second person masculine singular form too, imperative verb. This should suffice as an argument, but let's remove all doubts by assuming it is somehow in relation to salat, contact prayer, directly. The words that come after glorify are by praising your Lord before sunrise, which is not dawn, fajr, because dawn is about 1 to 2 hours before sunrise. Therefore, this would have to be another contact prayer that would make 4 contact prayers instead of 3 that we saw. And then it says before sunset, which is not the late evening time frame, making this the 5th time frame. And then it says, and during the periods or hours of the night. So if you understand this as periods, that makes 3 more night time frames, totaling 8 contact prayers. But if you do not consider that being the word period, instead hours, then your night contact prayer is a minimum of 3 hours long, because the Arabic word period here is in plural, minimum 3. And then you would have 6 contact prayers so far. But because the verse still continues by saying, and glorify at the ends of the day, nahar. Here the ends of the day is not dual. I repeat, here the ends of the day is not dual, like in Surah 11, 114 here above that we saw, which is the same word, but it's in plural here, meaning a minimum of 3. This would contradict, first of all, 1114 if it was salat, and you will now have a total of either 9 contact prayers or 11 if you count the periods of the night instead of hours of the night. Therefore, this is not referring to salat, contact prayer, and on the other hand, this is clearly referring to the tasbih instances, and like I said before in Surah 24 verse 41 here, these two, salat and tasbih, have been clearly distinguished. This video will not cover how to do tasbih, but in the later ones, which I mentioned earlier, will inshaAllah. Finally, the time frames have thus been clearly proven and fully detailed using the Quran alone, Surah 17 verse 46. But you may wonder that there is a gap between the dawn contact prayer, fajr, to the middle contact prayer, wusta, and the late evening contact prayer, isha, back to the dawn contact prayer, fajr. So one can simply say, well, I have a hard time waking up, so I'll get up a bit after sunrise, or whenever I get up, as long as it is before noon, or I'll establish my late evening contact prayer before I go to sleep. This, first of all, reflects your laziness to contact God and how much you really care about Him, which means other matters are more in priority than God. However, later on, you will see about ranking of the hereafter. But you should know that this life is a test, as God says in Surah 29, verse 2 to 3, and other places as well. And in Surah 67, verse 2 says, He is the one who created death and life, so that He may put you through trial, or test you, which of you would do best in deeds. He is the Almighty, the Forgiving. So the best action, if you really want to please God, or at least show it, because you do believe in Him in this life and the hereafter, and by not prioritizing this life, then you should observe, perform, and establish the salat, the contact prayer, on time, as it also says that in Surah 4 verse 103. Indeed, the contact prayer is on the believers at specific times, or prescribed times. Also, God tells us to strictly guard on the contact prayers, as Surah Baqarah verse 238, in Surah 6 verse 92, in Surah 23 verse 9, and Surah 70 verse 34. Therefore, establishing the contact prayers on time reflect your qualities of being obedient, here in Surah 2 verse 238, your God-fearingness, in Surah 6 verse 72, and being humbly submissive, Surah 23 verse 2. And at the dawn contact prayer on time, you are being witnessed by other entities. That covers the importance of establishing the contact prayers on time. And by the way, God reminds us to be consistent with our contact prayers, as said in Surah 70 verse 23. A final note, these 3 contact prayer time frames are in the 3 main transitional phases of the day, the beginning, the middle, and the end of the day, which is observable with the naked eye, and God gives us enough time to recuperate any contact prayer. Missing one will really show your lack of remembering God. There are always exceptions, and God knows best. We are now ready to move on to the Salat document, page 1.